You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello everybody, welcome to this week's show. And this week, the Macintosh is 35 years old, and Tim tweeted, to say so. Last week, the SE30 turned 30. That's a fabulous machine if you're old enough to have ever used one. And if not, later on, we will have some links for you to go and experience classic Macintosh on the web. This week, the 12.2 beta dropped for developers and apparently contains references to new iPod Touches and new iPads. Ooh! Apple News is allegedly going to come to Canada. Apple says it will pay people who win their shot on iPhone photo contest. And apparently 200 people have been, quote-unquote, laid off from Project Titan. I've got something to say about that a bit later. But anyway, to talk about all that and some other things, I have with me Nick Riley. Hello, Nick.
Oh, hi, Simon. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much. And we are joined by Melissa Davis, TheMacMommy. Hello, Melissa.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is fun. I've been really looking forward to this.
Oh, great. That's excellent. And of course, for anybody who doesn't know, Melissa, you are at TheMacMommy on Twitter. And of course, you blog at TheMacMommy.com.
Pretty much at TheMacMommy all over.
Oh, everywhere, yeah. And of course, you are on the geekiest show ever, which is over,
yep.
Over at MyMac.
In fact, I'm playing some kind of bingo game with myself here. I don't know. Everybody can join me if they want to. I joked about it in our 300th episode when we were talking with Tim on Geekiest Show Ever that, I've been on other podcasts and I've never been on yours before. And I thought, well, maybe I should start collecting them like a bingo card. So,
yeah, like
I was
Pokemon.
just on 3 Geeky Ladies. So
yeah,
now I'm on your show.
Like the Pokemon. Can you collect them all?
Yes, I collect them all.
Can we collect them?
That reminds me, I was going to ask you, are you collecting Tucson Macintosh user groups members like bobblehead dolls? Because
not
you've
quite.
Got Nemo, and you had David Acklam.
Yeah,
and they're my neighbor. They're my neighbors. They're my buddies out here. We go to the Tucson Macintosh users group together. I thought that was very cool. I really liked your interview with David Acklam. He's a really neat guy.
He was really fascinating. Excellent. I'm not actually intending to collect all of the Tucson Mac user group, but obviously as Nemo books a lot of guests, he seems to be. Yeah, I think we've had Kurt and several others. Steve
I'll take a look
Hammond.
for that one.
Anyway, we've had various people. Yes, and I think quite a lot of them probably are from the Tucson Mac user group, but it's not
your mug dealer.
Yeah, there we go. That's what. Well, what do? We pull in who we can. Right. So, 35 years ago, Steve strode across the stage and revealed "Hello World" from the Macintosh. Wow.
Gosh, we're old.
Yes, blimey. I didn't.
Now, to be fair, I'm a little bit younger, so I don't have a recollection of that. But I have been using Macs for a really long, long time.
I didn't actually get into the Macintosh until a few years later. I have to admit.
That's okay.
Yeah. So.
Do you know? I remember. So going off on a completely different computer. I remember going into an Acorn dealer.
Ooh, yes,
many years ago, and just after the Archimedes had come out, the 310 and the 410, and walking in, and there was something playing, a voice playing, and this guy turning around in his chair and saying, "This is coming off disc in a sort of hushed tones because he'd never heard anything like that before come out of computer speakers. So happy memories.
Oh yes, definitely. I do remember the 1984 advert though, so I guess I was aware of it, even if but I didn't actually start using Macs until I don't know a little bit later. Certainly, my first Mac was a 2CX, and we had an SE30 in the office. So there you go. Blimey, yeah, good days, good days. And for those of you who are listening who've never experienced the classic era, I found some links here. There's James Friend's Mac Classic emulator. There's a link in the show notes for that, which is really cool. Allows you to
Very
run.
cool.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
very
spend
cool.
some time in them.
And also, if you go to archive.org and look up the Mac software library, you can run a whole host of early Macintosh software in your browser, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. And we were kind of geeking out a bit earlier, just before the show, having a look at some of the things that were on archive.org.
Strolling down memory lane.
Yes, there's Dark Castle, Oregon Trail, Crystal Quest, Prince of Persia, 1, After Dark with the Flying Toasters. Oh dear. Yes, there's a rabbit hole. There's a rabbit hole that's going to suck up a lot of time, I suspect, for anybody who remembers that. There we are.
I'm gonna show this to my son. He'll spend hours on this. This is gonna be great.
Yeah.
Hypercard, Mac Paint.
HyperCard, yeah, Mac Paint. Oh, yeah, various systems you can run here: 701, 608, 753. Well, there's even Microsoft Flight Simulator 101.02. Who remembers
The bomb message, I wonder.
There we are. Yep.
Extensions. Oh, yeah.
Yay, I know. It's hard to believe, I have to say, it's hard to believe that it's 35 years ago, but...
Press your shift key. Disable all extensions.
Yes. Turn off the inits. Oh, dear.
I used to work in an ad agency, and funny story, I had a boss who had a very thick, very heavy Asian accent. And I think he was Thai, and he would come over and, we would be complaining about problems that we were having, and he'd just walk over and he'd say, press your shift key, except it didn't come out as shift. You know what I mean? So that's what we called it from then on.
Yeah. I always remember reading a story in the back of Mac User, back in the clan. I think it might have been by Charles Shaw Murray, actually. But
was it one of those magazines that had a floppy disk in the pocket?
No. Mac
and then later on, do you remember you'd read magazines and they'd come with floppy disks, or they'd come with CDs?
And later on, they came with CDs. Yeah. No. The Mac User was aimed more at the professional market, so it tended very rarely to have anything with it. But I'm pretty sure it was by Charles Shaw Murray, and he wrote this piece about his Mac misbehaving. And he was describing the extensions and the inits, and he was going on about them being chained to the benches and pulling on the oars like in a Roman galley, and some init go falling to the floors. I can't take any more. I remember crying with laughter at that back in the day. And some people listening to this and go, "What are they talking about?
What are they talking about?"
What are you talking about?
Oh well,
I only bought my first time back in 2007, so this is all before my time.
Right. Well, yeah, the thing. Melissa will remember.
Lived.
Yeah, with the extensions. Yeah, and they used to all come up along the screen, didn't they? As you booted, they used to come up along the screen.
Yes.
And you had to get them in the right order. There were certain things you had to do to make them work sometimes if they misbehaved. Oh,
it was like virtually trying to untangle Christmas lights at times, because they would cause all kinds of problems, and they would conflict with each other, and so you'd have to constantly go through troubleshooting steps, and you'd have to uncheck this one and then reboot and then uncheck and then no, that didn't cause the problem. Okay, check that one back. Now uncheck this one. I mean, it was madness, but and here we are, how many years later, and we're still using Macintoshes.
Yeah.
Glutton for punishment.
Definitely. Well, right. After that, iOS 12.2 beta includes references to new iPod Touch and 4 new iPad models, apparently.
4? Oh my.
Yeah, 4 new iPad models, allegedly. And also, some people are saying references to AirPods V2. So, this, of course, is mostly down to, the renowned Steve Troughton-Smith, who loves to dig through the code. What's it say here? Yes, Steve Troughton-Smith. 4 new iPad models are referenced within the code, identified as iPad 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, and, stunningly enough, 11.4, in Wi-Fi and cellular variations. And a new iPod Touch model identified as the iPod 9.1.
An
Yeah.
iPod Touch. Interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
yes. I mean, they haven't.
I thought that went bye-bye. I thought
No,
I
the
thought they
i
were
you
kind of
can.
retiring that.
No, they retired all the others. I think you can still get an iPod Touch, but it's the
It just
6th
hasn't been
gen.
refreshed for so long.
No, they haven't refreshed it in years. I mean, it's.
And the 4 iPad versions doesn't refer to different carriers?
Well, no
Like
idea.
the antennas for different carriers?
Could be anything,
I
couldn't it?
wonder.
Could be anything.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. According to this, the new 7th generation iPod Touch would be the first update in 4 years.
Wow.
Although without the inclusion of Face ID or Touch ID, it sounds if the update would be rather minor. I mean, we're taking all this on Steve Troughton-Smith's say-so, of course.
Yeah, I'm not convinced myself they'll go back to produce another iPod Touch.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the market would be for that besides little kids.
Yeah. I guess there are people who, would still.
If screen time, I mean, I've been using it a lot with a lot of success. If screen time has proved that much of a success and parents are really liking it, could be that there's a market for that because, parents before have been kind of sort of, I don't know, wedged in having to get their kids phones instead of iPod touches. And, most little kids, they don't really need the phone part.
No, exactly.
I don't know.
And
I mean, I'm a mom, so my brain's going there.
yeah, well, that, and of course, the phones are getting ever more expensive. It's
Yeah, maybe they're really trying to differentiate. Like people are getting angry about having to afford the expense, and maybe they want to get that market, that they want to serve that demographic.
No, come on, this is Apple we're talking about.
Right.
they're seeing some revenue stream that they can actually generate out of it. No
Yeah.
doubt.
Well, they're really good at convincing you to get things that you don't need. Oh, I have this need I never
Absolutely.
knew I had.
so I don't know what would they be basing it on. I mean, the last one was based on what, the iPhone 6.
For the
Yes.
model structure.
Yeah, I think it was based, on the shell of because it was the first. It was kind of a hint, wasn't it, before the 6 came out, because it came out with the rounded edges and the and every.
Was it
and
the 5th gen? What's the oldest iPod? What's the last iPod? Was it a 5th gen or a 6th?
Sixth
I thought it was
gen.
okay.
6th gen was the last one. And that came out before the. Yeah, I'm sure it came out before the iPhone 6, and it had it. People were looking to it for hints as to what the new iPhone would be like, because it had a camera bump and it was a smooth-bodied, round-edged.
That makes sense.
So, but by the
Clue,
sounds,
it's a clue.
yeah. What would they base this one on? In iPhone 8, I guess.
I've heard one or two podcasts suggest. Now, I'm not advocating this as I think it's a good idea, but they've suggested that maybe it's going to end up being a cross between the iPad Mini and the iPod Touch.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm not sure, but that's what I've heard other people say.
Yeah, that's a whole new size.
I've heard people mentioning that, but I'm thinking that doesn't jibe with this very. If you're going to build a whole new thing, why would you not put Touch ID and all the rest into it?
Yeah,
right.
It'd be interesting to know how much if they're still. Presumably they're still making a small profit on the iPod Touch, but it'd be interesting to know how many they sell.
Yeah, I don't suppose they shift that many, but that said, if you were talking, if you're talking there and saying, well, let's talk about, say, using an iPhone 8 as the kind of
as the base model
template, yeah,
right, yeah, template.
and then you're not You're not using OLED screens, you're not using edge-to-edge screens, you're not using Touch ID, you're not using 3D Touch. You should be able to produce that, I would have thought, relatively cheaply.
And then bill
Relatively.
it as a stocking stuffer.
Well, yeah, relatively.
Mhm.
Apple price
Mhm.
relatively. That doesn't, it'd probably still be, I don't know, what, $150 or something at least. But
Well,
Well,
you figure
isn't the iPod more
the
than that, isn't
iPad for education has gone down in price to 300 and something,
yeah,
329. So
329, isn't it?
if you
Yeah,
use that as a base price, it's conceivable that an iPod Touch could be half that price.
yeah, yeah. Well, I remember getting an iPod Touch for my son some years ago, and I think I paid £129 for it.
They used to give them away for free when you bought a Mac.
Yeah, I didn't have the money to buy a Mac and get a free one.
Mm.
But yeah. So interesting. 4 iPads does seem like quite a lot. But then again, I suppose if you said, I mean, there's rumours that there might be the iPad Mini might make a comeback.
I have heard those rumors.
So if you was to
I'm
say
just gonna
that,
say la 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 and
la la
pretend that it's
la,
the
yeah.
carrier
But
models.
if if you were to go with that, I suppose 4 iPads could be iPad Mini, iPad Standard, and then 2 sizes of Pro,
hmm
which would, I figure, I mean, 3 of those are pretty much, you could predict that there's going to be an
hmm
update to the Standard and updates to the Pros.
hmm
So I don't know. I mean, I have to say that the latest iPad Standard, the $329 one, I mean, looks like a really good piece of kit for the money, because I mean they added pencil support.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I was
Um,
jealous because this is the second time it's happened to me where I waited so long to upgrade the iPad, and then when I finally did, 6 months later they put out another one that has that much more capability, and they dropped the price. Oh,
yeah,
drives me nuts.
but they did change the screen back to a air gapped screen, didn't they? But whether that's to do with enabling the pen, I don't know.
Right.
Whereas before they had the one where the LCD's literally stuck on the back of the glass. But there we are. So I guess then after that, I guess the next debate will be, when is that likely to turn up? Is that going to be a March event, or are we going to hold out? Are they going to hold out to WWDC? Who knows?
It's going to be autumn, isn't it? Isn't it always autumn?
Well, no, because the iPads, they often do.
Or is it just the phone in autumn?
Well, the phone is usually the phone is pretty much always in the autumn. The iPad has floated about a bit, I think.
Yeah, it has.
But the
March.
last couple of times that they did iPads, they had a book event and they had an education event, and they were both
Yeah.
sort of in March,
Yeah.
April time, I think. And I
Yeah,
think
it was March.
yeah,
March was the back to school one.
So yeah, I think
I must admit, because I've got no real interest in updating my iPads. They just seem to roll around so regularly these days that I tend to lose a little bit of interest in it. Really.
yeah, I mean, I don't even have an iPad personally.
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, there's only really 2 reasons that I have an iPad, and it's because I'm a consultant, so I kind of have to eat my own dog food and be able to have what my clients use.
Yeah.
And then I have kids, and so I want them to be able to learn it and learn the coding on it.
Don't get me wrong, I really love the iPad I've got, and I probably use it more than any other device I've got. But
they have long-lasting
They do,
they
it's fine for what I want. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first iPad that we had an iPad 2, so literally the second generation iPad, and that only finally gave up the ghost about 6 months ago.
You'll laugh when I tell you that I'm actually supporting 55 iPad 2s at my kids' school.
Well,
wow.
Other than being
deploy them, MDM them.
Other than being a little sluggish by modern standards, it was, held up well.
They're still usable. They still serve a purpose, even if it's only one purpose.
Yeah, well, it was running iOS 9. The biggest problem with it was, that my boy could fill it up with apps quicker than you could.
Yeah.
Quicker than you could clear them, because he would be downloading endless free games.
Right, and these ones that I'm supporting are 16 gigabytes, so
Yeah,
there's only
yeah.
so much you can put on them.
But yes, so
But
was
there's only so much that they use them for anyway, and the problem has been, trying to use apps in education requires just so much extra work to manage the data that they carry, and especially when a lot of these apps, which are really great apps, but the data isn't synced to the cloud at all, so you can't really get at it. And when you have to reimage them, well, there goes all the data. So it's been frustrating.
yeah. Well,
So they're good until the browsers don't work on them anymore.
yeah. I mean, that was that's the biggest thing. They said there was a chat Donny and I were having. Some time ago, I said that I had an old white MacBook, which wouldn't go any higher than Lion, I think. And it had become basically unusable, not because it didn't work well enough, but because
It's the internet. Yeah, once you can't connect it to the internet anymore, what are you going to do with it?
the version of
Picture frame.
Safari that it supported, was constantly this is too old, and
Yes.
you couldn't download a new one, and it was too old to support a new version of Chrome or Firefox or so
Some of those you could convert to a low-end Chromebook if you really wanted to.
I wiped it and installed a reasonably new version of Ubuntu.
Oh, well, there you go.
I think I got Ubuntu 16, 2016 on it. It's not the greatest machine, obviously. It's only got 2 gig RAM and
No, but it's the little engine that could, and so you're like, oh, this is cool. I can do this.
With Ubuntu on it was it was a usable machine. So Donny had to go at his, but found that apparently for him that didn't pan out. So there we go. But yeah, that you're right. Once they've reached the stage where you can't get an up-to-date browser, that's when they become effectively no good.
Yes.
And a laptop wouldn't be the best server. Now, well, I had to take that back. For music, I mean, I have a 13-inch MacBook Pro that is I mean, it's not so old that I couldn't. I think I can get it up to El Capitan, and then that's it. I think it tops out at that. But it's not something. Put it this way, it's not something I want to dump a lot of money into. And so the battery went on it. So I just pulled the battery out of it. And so I just have it plugged in with the power cable. And it's got a very small hard drive in it. And it's got just enough RAM. Like I basically scrapped it for parts. I took out the good parts of it, over the years and have used that. But it's still going to be a serviceable machine for just an iTunes server, just to run music. The plan that I have for it is to put it in my husband's classroom and hook it up to speakers, and it's modern enough that it'll take a vote. I could probably hook up an old Apple wireless router and just make a private network for it to connect to, and then he could use it just to play music, just as a geeky toy, so to speak. Just a large enough hard drive to keep an iTunes library on there and just shuffle music.
Yeah,
it could even serve as a digital photo frame and have pictures of the family on it. So I mean, there's always something you can do with these machines, but like I said, you can't connect them to the internet. They're not worth it to use as any kind of daily driver by any stretch of the imagination. But you can still repurpose them to do other cool things.
Yeah,
so they have their staying power.
I mean, what finally killed our iPad 2 was the home button went.
Yes.
So we got around that by using the on-screen, the accessibility button.
Accessibility. Yep.
And then it started getting very dubious about touch. I think the touch sensors started to break down, and it would either not respond or suddenly, register a load of taps that nobody.
We spend so much money on these things. I mean, there's such a huge barrier of entry when it comes to buying these electronics in the first place. And then it's like, I'll be damned if I'm going to just throw this thing in the trash. Like, it's still got life in it. I'm still willing to save it because you spend so much money on it to begin with that it ekes along and you just try to keep making it go. It's like a car. You just try to keep driving it until you just can't replace any more parts on it. I mean, I've had one car like that where we just kept replacing parts in it till the point where it got to be having engine problems, and then you have to consider the risk versus the reward. And I think it's like that with some of these electronics. I don't know. I mean, some people are just I guess they're wealthy enough that they can just toss it aside and get something new. But I'm not in that camp. I like to make stuff last and repurpose it.
Yep, I'm certainly not in that camp. I mean, my daily driver is a MacBook Pro 13-inch Retina, but it's a 2013 model, and
Yeah, but you can still run Mojave on it.
yeah, I can.
I waited 8 years before I upgraded my machine.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well,
That's a long time.
my previous machine was a 2012, and I wouldn't have replaced it yet, except that my son happened to it, and
Your son happened to it, huh?
yeah, my son happened to it. Yeah.
Yep, that'll happen.
Yeah, we go. So apparently, also this 12.2 beta brings Apple News to Canada, which will please some of our listeners, particularly Dougie. Why it's taken so long for Apple News to make it to Canada, I do not know, but there you go. Only those deep in Apple know the answer to that one. Apple has said it will pay shot on iPhone contest winners after a backlash. This story's at Gizmodo, but it's all over the web, of course. Well, quite rightly, Apple have said that the winners of the shot on iPhoto competition will be paid a licensing fee for use of their photographs. But originally, the wording was this prize has no cash value. And there was a huge outcry, apparently, in the usual fashion. I don't know. I mean, nobody's really sure if Apple, ever actually intended to not pay. I mean, you could read that two ways, can't you? I mean, this prize has no cash value doesn't necessarily mean we won't pay you a licensing fee. It just means maybe that there is no, there's no $10,000, jackpot for winning.
The prize is supposed to be that you're supposed to say, "Look, Ma, there's my picture up on that billboard." That's supposed to be your prize.
That's supposed to be your prize. It's one of those things where because of what I do, I understand some of the backlash. Because
yeah. I'm thinking the same thing.
There's this big thing, and a lot of professionals quite rightly said, yeah, there's a lot of this exploitation goes on where people say, we'll use your stuff, but what you get out of it is exposure, which is basically balderdash.
And that's not even true because, I mean, I have yet to see a commercial that says, with a photo credit that says this photo was taken by, so-and-so.
Well, apparently the shot on iPhone ones do credit people by name.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, and usually their first name and then an initial, apparently.
But that makes sense.
They've basically, Apple, quite rightly, put out a statement which said, let me just see what they said, so I don't misremember it.
I see where they changed it.
Yeah, 3 days after announcing shot on iPhone challenge, Apple has updated the rules page following a burst of outrage from artists on social media. Apple was previously reached out to photographers through the ad agency rather than putting out a call to a public. 10 winning photos will be featured on Apple Newsroom, Apple's Instagram, Apple.com, Apple retail stores, and billboards around the world, as determined by sponsor in its sole discretion. Yes, thank you for the pop-up, Gizmodo. Billboards around the world as determined by the sponsor in its sole discretion. Prize is not transferable, no substitutions or cash redemptions. This prize has no cash value. Now, as I'm saying, depending on how you want to interpret that could simply mean you can't say, no, I'd rather have $10,000.
Yep, that's one way to interpret it, for sure.
The updated document reads, winners will receive a licensing fee for use on billboards and other marketing channels. Apple believes strongly that art should be compensated for their work. Photographers who shoot the final 10 winning photos will receive a licensing fee for use of such photos on billboards and other marketing channels. Well, whether they, intentionally or otherwise were not going to pay, they've done the right thing, basically, and said, we will compensate you fairly for use of your photographs. Of course, previously, nobody knows what the people who did shot on iPhone got paid, if anything, because it wasn't an open to the public competition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they approached various people, I think, to take photographs.
Well, now that's interesting. So that changes one of my thoughts that I did have about this, where I thought, well, who are they considering an artist, quote unquote. If it had been open to the general public, I thought that maybe the
Well,
message that
this one is. This is the whole thing. This one is
anybody
open.
can take pictures and look. You can be an artist, and you can be an artist, and you can look like a professional photographer just by snapping this selfie or snapping this sunset picture, and they'll. But they're treated as the general public and not an actual artist who does that for a living.
Yeah. Well, I mean, previously, apparently, they've approached, professionals directly to take photographs for the shot on iPhone. This one's going to be open to all and sundry. And
I wonder if when they did approach the artists, if the artists came back and said, well, this is Apple. You need to pay out a little bit more than that in licensing fee. And, maybe we want some royalties here. So it could have been that maybe that's why they changed gears. But either way, I think all in all, it's good. I mean, I know I'm biased, we are on the Apple show here. But I think that Apple usually is pretty good about, they've made a mistake. They cop to it. They admit it. And it's about how they make it right.
Yep.
It seems to me that it's the world we live in at the moment, isn't it? That if you make announcements as a big company, you can expect it to be torn to pieces in multiple different ways.
Yeah, it's like throwing fresh meat out to the lion den.
It does, yeah. It must be very difficult to actually put anything out at all without having to pore over it for hours, thinking, well, how can people interpret this?
Yeah, how can people deliberately misinterpret this in a negative light?
That as well. Yeah.
There we go.
Must be very difficult. Whereas I expect in the beginning it was someone saying, "Hey, we could make this into a competition."
Yeah, yeah.
It was just a genuinely, good idea.
Great. Well, let's just, rather than paying somebody to go and take pictures for us, let's just throw it open and pick out the best 10.
I think their heart was in the right place in the beginning. I don't know that they were, genuinely trying to be greedy about it, but it certainly got misinterpreted and rightfully so, because maybe they just didn't consider all of that.
No, I'm sure. I don't, usual as you say, I don't think there's any malice in it, and they've been called out and said, okay, yeah, maybe we've made a mistake. So there we go. Google apparently have nabbed senior Mac OS engineer Bill Stevenson to go and work on the Fuchsia OS, according to the Cult of Mac. Well, sort of not that exciting a story, I suppose. I mean, Apple recently nabbed Google's AI guy, didn't they? So I don't read much into these things, to be honest.
Am I supposed to know what the Fuchsia OS is?
Well, Fuchsia is the name of Google's kind of secret, although not secret, next generation OS.
Sounds like
right, okay.
It's allegedly going to, at some point, replace probably both the Chrome OS and Android.
Oh, interesting.
It'll be unified, so it'll be like Windows Mobile.
The idea is apparently that Fuchsia is going to be a modular, fully scalable OS.
So let's take a bunch of people, let's take some guy from Apple to make it look really good, and let's, copy what Microsoft has done, and then we'll do our own thing about it. And then if we don't like something, we'll just kill it.
I've no idea, but there's been a lot of talk about it in certain circles.
Obviously not circles in which I'm involved.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you've got to be either interested in Google or OS type news,
yes,
or fairly geeky things like that. As I see it, there are two reasons. I can see two reasons why Google want to do this. One, Android won't last forever. They want to build a newer, more coherent, fully scalable OS that they can run everything from an earbud all the way up to a desktop machine on.
Yes, they've got a serious problem with fragmentation.
Yeah. The second, and to my mind, possibly the far more important for Google point, is that they let Android out as free for all. And although it got them, market penetration, Android's a bloody mess, realistically. Or not Android in and of itself, but the fragmentation of it into, all these different versions, and it's a nightmare. And also,
it's a sugar high. It's all the candy that they consumed making all this stuff.
Yeah, but of course, if they were to, if they start shifting over to at some point to the Fuchsia OS, nobody says they have to give that away. That could be a fully proprietary, they could go for if you want to use Fuchsia OS, no, you can't just have it and reskin it and put all your own apps and stuff on it. They could take much more control. They could license that. They could say, no, you have to, they could do a full-on Windows on it, really.
Competition's good.
Yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what they'll do with it, but I think we should come back in a year from now and see if this is still a thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
True.
Whether it actually, ever arrives. Let's face it, plenty of people over the years have had putative OSs that never made it out of the door.
And that's the other problem that Google has, besides just the fragmentation now, that they're trying to, it seems like this is an attempt to stop the hemorrhaging, I guess. But the other problem that they have is reliability. It's like they're the developers that cry wolf. Oh yeah, we're gonna make this product. Here it is, install it and use it. Oh, invest all your time in it and put all your contacts in it and let's put them on this server. And then we're killing it like 3 months later. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. But if you're into such things, the rumors around Fuchsia OS are that Google are working on a very focused, modular, scalable OS to run everything. Whether they can achieve that, of course, is a whole different matter, isn't it?
Well, and there's people that, I guess maybe because we're longtime Mac users, I'll speak for myself here, but, I like reliability and I like stability and I like simplicity. I'm kind of a purist. I don't like all of these changes, but there's plenty enough people that deal with it and they don't really mind. So I could just be alone in that.
By the way, Simon, you get award for word of the day, putative. Well done. Yeah.
There we go. Yes. Okay. Now this story here, this is pretty much the last Apple story. This one it comes from Extreme Tech. It says, but it's again all over the place. Apple lays off 200 plus people from Project Titan, the self-driving car effort. Right now, I've seen this put forward in a variety of stories as in many places as 200 plus Titan engineers meet end of road, or all sorts of other.
Yeah.
But the general implication, particularly in headlines, has been that Apple are sacking 200 people from Project Titan, and downscaling it, and it's like, oh, it's all woe is me. But actually, if you read into the story, most of them are simply being moved to other parts of the company.
That's what I was thinking. I thought they're just reabsorbing them, aren't they?
They're just shuffling stuff. Don't forget they've got this
that happens
new
all the time.
They've got this new guy who they poached from Google, the machine learning / AI guy, and he's working with Bob Mansfield apparently, and they're therefore in charge of Project Titan. The general sort of story, as I see it, when you read behind, between the lines, is that simply him, adjusting the project to fit how he wants to work. Because if you come in to take control of a project, you want it run your way, not how whoever else was in charge of it. So there's a lot of stuff kind of crowing about this, but actually, as far as I can see, he's saying this, some of these engineers are going to take what they've learned on Project Titan and break off into smaller groups and be distributed throughout Apple, where they can apply that knowledge to other products. So actually, it's been portrayed as doom and gloom. All I can see is,
of course,
typical shuffling. We're going to take some people
as a scapegoat.
Yeah, we're going to take some people off Project Titan and move them somewhere else.
It's quite possible, isn't it, that they had an idea, and we know that Apple spend quite a lot of money on trying things out to see, what falls out when they try stuff, because that's how you come up with something new. If you're not doing that, you won't come up with anything new. And perhaps they feel that this area of work has come to a full stop, so they're moving them elsewhere. As you say, it's just business practice. It's not really a
they're saying they've been laid off or, have been dismissed or whatever. No, no such thing.
I don't think that's true.
If you
Yeah.
actually
And I've
read Apple's
always,
statement here, they say we have an incredibly talented team on autonomous systems and associated technologies. As the team focuses their work on key areas for 2019, some groups are being moved to projects in other parts of the company where they will support machine learning and other initiatives across Apple. So there you go. Nobody's lost their job. They've simply been reassigned to other projects.
so research and development, they'll take the skills and the knowledge that they acquired from working on that project and be able to apply it somewhere else where it might be more timely and more meaningful. And I've often thought about this whole Project Titan thing. Everybody says that it's for a self-driving car, but what if it isn't? Or what if they've refocused their efforts into it just simply being an operating system for cars to be installed?
There's
What if
that.
cars are going to be turned into, I mean, cars have an operating system, I mean,
Yeah.
not my car, it's really old, but someday I think that I'll eventually drive a car that will have an operating system, not unlike CarPlay. I mean, I've seen that briefly in action, and those are in certain models of cars, but who's to say that they're not, like we were just talking about the Fuchsia OS, that it would be some kind of uniform operating system that would be installed on across all devices. Who's to say in the future that there won't be some kind of unified operating system for just cars in general, that there'll be an operating system that
Yeah.
you'll have on your dashboard?
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a very large component of what it is. And it may have been that they scrapped the self-driving portion of it long ago when they didn't think that it fit their DNA as a company, that they don't want to be responsible for deaths. I mean, that's happened. I mean, people have been killed by self-driving cars, and why would Apple want to get behind that? Maybe they just want to be the operating system, and then, there's kind of less fault there.
Well, I mean,
I think the article's a little bit biased in all honesty. I'm reading on a little bit later on. It says overall, some of the hype on self-driving cars has died down over the past 12 months. Well, that's probably true, but that doesn't mean that people aren't still working hard on it.
No.
And it says, thanks in no small part to the prominent struggle of its biggest players. Well, I'm not convinced that they've been struggling. They've just been developing.
I mean, I picked that one to actually put in here as a link because it's one of the least negative.
Yes.
Some of the other ones I saw were really making out like, oh, Apple's practically shutting down Project Titan as a complete waste of time. It's like, no, they've not said any such thing.
The sky is falling. The sky is falling. Apple are doomed.
You're just making stuff up,
Making stuff up and making the stock go down.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, no, were they making a car? We know that Johnny is, a car head. His friend, is it Mark Newson? He's a car head. Maybe they were really interested in the car. Maybe they still are. Nobody knows. It's a secret. It's a secret project. Nobody knows what's going on.
We'll know when we're meant to know about it.
Exactly. The other thing that everybody keeps on about autonomous cars, and I'm very much behind that. I'd really like to have autonomous cars that you could just get in the car and say, take me to work, or drive me to my grandmother's or whatever, and it does it, and no one will have to worry about having a driving license and all this junk. But I think in order to get there, we're going to have in the meantime cars which have ever more driver assist features. I mean, my car, I'm lucky enough. I'm lucky enough that at the moment I have a new Citroen C4 Space Tourer. I didn't buy that. My wife gets that from the British government because she's disabled.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you give up a certain amount of your benefits, and effectively they lease you a car. And the car we had, they said it's time to send it back and have a new car. So a new car we have. And yes, it's I mean, the other one was computer engine management and all the rest, but this one, I mean, it's it's got two LCD screens. One's a dash, one's your sat nav and everything else. Various screens for your CarPlay and your aircon, but everything is managed. The braking is managed. There's parking sensors all over the place. It does this, that, and the other.
Is it possible that your wife is a beta tester?
Yeah, my wife doesn't drive. She's not allowed to drive. I drive it. But
Oh, okay.
it's a
Was it possible that you're a beta tester
well,
for
yeah,
it?
yeah. Well, it is, but it is a lovely car. But yes, you even though you are, you physically drive it, there's an awful lot of things you can't do. It won't let you, for example, you can't manually change gear up or down if it considers that is a not sensible thing to do. So
When I get older, I'm probably going to really, really like that because I work with a lot of people who have trouble trying to get out of the house and get rides. So I can see how that would be really, really helpful for a certain demographic of people. But for right now, like I drive stick shift. I like to drive my car. I don't want my car to drive me yet.
well,
I want to drive it. I can't stand driving an automatic. Like I would have been in third gear by now.
But the fact is, though, there are different occasions when you'd like to be able to do different things, aren't there? I mean, I agree. I enjoy
Yeah, if I
driving.
could turn it off, I would like that.
Oh yeah, you can turn it off. I mean, mine is a full auto, right, with computer controlled 8-speed gearbox.
Of course, the argument is if autonomous cars do arrive eventually, and I have no idea whether they will. I think they probably will, but we'll see. That insurance-wise, it's going to be expensive if you want to drive your car yourself because you're more of a risk than the car will be.
Very much so. I suspect driving a car will become very much an expensive hobby.
A bit of a luxury, yeah. But we'll see. Yeah, I think that's a little way away yet.
Well, yeah, and our roads, aren't all exactly built for this kind of stuff either. I mean, we have
the roads
in the States, we have a high
roads in America are much better than our roads in the UK.
Oh, yeah, I can assure you, a self-driving car in parts of Britain will have a lot worse time.
Yeah,
most of the US.
That's what I'm picturing. I'm picturing, there are plenty of highways. I mean, out here in Arizona, we have beautiful highways, and there are lanes that are considered high occupancy lanes, and it's a nice, kind of straight line. It's just one track, and if we had more of those types of lanes on more of our highways, then that would be great. But there's a lot of country out here, and I just can't imagine these self-driving cars navigating some of these places. Just some of the places that I go up in the mountains to go out to people. I have a hard time picturing how it would navigate.
Well, we'll see.
We will have to see on that, won't we? We really will. I think I would really like it. Whether or not they can actually manage it in my lifetime, we'll have to see. Right. Well, we've been going for quite a while. What I'm going to do is, there's no John this week, so we'll have a short musical interlude while we all go and get a fresh cup of coffee, I think. So, back in a minute. Well, after that short interlude where we have refreshed our beverages, we'll carry on. So, I think we've covered all the Apple stories. There's a couple of techno stories, basically about Facebook, so I'm not going to go into that in too much depth, but Zuckerberg wrote a piece in, was it the Washington Post, I think, or somewhere, calling it the facts about Facebook. Which Clicks have written a piece about here, describing it as the peak of hypocrisy. Because in a guest article, the Facebook CEO defended data collection and claims that users now have more control. His statements, however, show he does not understand the basic problem. Oh, sorry, it was the Wall Street Journal, apparently. He defended the advertising-based business model of his company and claimed that Facebook gives users more control. You control whether we use your data for advertising. The only question is why users can't control whether Facebook is allowed to collect data or not. Of course, as far as I can tell, that's a complete and utter lie. You do not have any control over what bloody Facebook do with your data, or whether or not you have any way to control them from absorbing it in the first place. So there you go. I don't know what you know. I know Nick says that you use Facebook a bit, don't you, Nick?
Yes, in a very sort of controlled way.
Mm.
I often think people's major problems, with Facebook is that when it first came out, that people liked everyone under the sun, and then couldn't control their feeds. I've always been quite selective about who I'll like and who I won't like, and even if quite often I'll get requests from people I've never heard of who want to be part of and I just say no, decline.
Yeah, who the hell are you?
Yeah, and that way I keep it mostly under control. I mean, there are things about Facebook I don't like, and I know their let's say their morals on personal information are perhaps somewhat sketchy. But I find it useful for what I use it for. One of the things I'm doing at the moment is that there's a local history group that are looking into. They're posting lots and lots of really old photos of the area that I live in, and it's just absolutely fascinating because people have obviously, who are posting on it, have lived there a long time, and they've got some really old photos back into the 19th century and stuff. And it really, really is very interesting indeed.
I have to say that I have heard good things about Facebook groups. People keep saying that groups on Facebook are better than Google groups or Yahoo groups or whatever.
Yes, I think they are. Yeah,
we have genealogy groups. I talked about this in the last podcast I did with the three geeky ladies. We were talking about our Facebook usage and stuff, and so I won't rehash too much of it. We can listen to that episode, but we were talking about genealogy, and that's one of the reasons why times when I feel like I would like to quit Facebook, but I simply can't because part of it is my job. People ask me enough questions about it, something that I have to know about. So
yeah,
I help people, make business pages and things like that. And I can't close down my account because I need to be able to log into it as a person. I have a business page there that I still use. It's where the people are, and it's where your friends and family hang out. And I have two on both sides, my side and my husband's side, where we're involved in two different family groups that are for genealogy, and it's semi-private, although it's not, but it kind of is. It's free, so the barrier to entry is really low.
I think Nick's right. Part of the thing is now. I mean, I've never been on Facebook and I've no desire to start now. But if I did, I think, there are plenty of people out there saying if you want to use Facebook, and you were to start now, it's like I would be much more restrained about who I invited in. I would be much more careful about what information I put on there.
Yeah.
And I think I think you're right there, Nick. I think a lot of it, like so many things, when it started out, it all seemed like harmless and it's all harmless fun until it's not, as they like to say.
And I also think that people don't make use of the tools that are built into it. So some time ago, I friended a friend of a friend, and he happened to post tons of stuff. I mean, literally, first day I'm on, he's posted 30 or 40 items onto which is just too much for me. But you can mute people. You don't have to unfriend them.
No,
you can actually just say, I don't want to hear that person anymore. And that's that. It's done. And I think, I think partly it's also because people don't know how to use it. But underlying it all is this distrust that we have of Facebook. So even though I'll continue to use it, I know that I'm not very enamored of what goes on in the background.
No, I think that's the thing. And lots of people, like you, Melissa, lots of people say, well, I have to be on there, for my work, for these groups that I'm in, for family, for whatever. And
I resent that. But it's the truth. It's a fact.
Yeah. And yeah. I think the truth about that seems to be if that is the situation, you just have to be very careful about how you manage
Mhm.
what you do. No.
I've never personally had any disillusions about. I knew I was the product. I've been using it since they opened it up to non-college people. So I've been using it for a long, long time, and I knew that the stuff that I was putting in there. I've always had this personal mantra: if you can get the data out, you need to be able to. If you can get the data in, you need to be able to get the data
Mm.
out. So I never put anything in there that I didn't think that I could get back out again, as far as pictures or blogging or notes or anything like that, or ideas. I frequently download the content. I frequently make PDFs of it so that I can keep a track of it. I wish that they would make the conversations that happen. There's been some very meaningful, even if they're infighting, there's still very meaningful conversations that have happened that I would like to keep for just the sake of like journaling. I mean, periodically I like to go back through and read those conversations. And I wish that they threaded it better when it comes to being able to archive that stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost like your own little personal time machine. But I've never had any illusions about like anything that you post in there, whether or not you're sharing it with a group or not, is always going to be found out. It's always going to be someone could get to it somehow. Nothing's ever private when it comes to that. So I wasn't so hurt about the whole Cambridge Analytica thing that came out. I was like, well, that's not a huge shocker. I didn't like the way that they manipulated people through targeted posts and just made people see things differently.
Yeah.
And that's what bothered me, was using this as they kind of weaponized it. They took this tool that innocent people are using to share their stories with their loved ones, and pictures of their kids and their dogs and their food and their stories, and like like the example you gave, all those pictures that are being shared and then people having conversations about it. All of that stuff, could it be used against somebody? I don't know, but it's quite possible. But they're using it for harm and not good.
Yeah, I think
Yeah. Sorry. Go on,
no, I was
Simon.
going to say I kind of said this before, that I don't have a very high opinion of Facebook, as everybody knows, and yet the concept behind it, I don't dislike. And even knowing, even if you go into it knowing, I think my real problem with Facebook is the lying, the hypocrisy, and the sheer underhandedness, of Zuckerberg and
The
Facebook,
implementation of it.
corporation
Mhm.
itself. Whereas the actual original concept of a way for people to, interact is fine. And it's not even, all right. So they're collecting your data. Well, I used Google for long enough and let them collect a certain amount of data about me. But I went into that with my eyes open. I think the trouble with Facebook is it becomes harder and harder because they just keep doing it, and they just say, "Oh, we're really sorry, we won't let that happen again." And it's like, yeah, but you blatantly are, because you don't actually give a flying monkeys, do you? You're getting away with it.
It's like the example that we had earlier when we were talking about what Apple did wrong when it came to not compensating people appropriately for their work. They realized that they made a mistake and they self-corrected, and then they led by example. Whereas not so much when it comes to Facebook.
Not so
You know
much.
what I mean? And I posted a link there in the side chat, and I just think it's kind of interesting to juxtapose the two, that he wrote this piece soon after Tim Cook's op-ed about privacy.
Yeah. And the other story is apparently, well, this is headed "Zuckerberg wants to merge Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp messaging." Again, there's a lot of this all over the place. Again, I've tried to pick
Heard
one.
of this big boat that's called the Titanic, right?
I've tried to pick a link which is less sensational than some of the others. Several of the stories I read about it kind of implied that Facebook were going to mash Messenger, WhatsApp, and Instagram into one enormous blob somehow. That's not what they're saying. What they're actually saying is they want to merge the back end behind Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp into one unified system, and that you would still access them through these different portals. what you
I'm having a hard time understanding why WhatsApp and Messenger are two separate things anyway.
because they bought WhatsApp.
Right. So, but I could see those two things being combined. I mean, if you look at all the things, it's like using the right tool for the job. Messenger and WhatsApp kind of do the same thing. So I could see how those two would be combined.
Yeah. As long as Messenger inherits WhatsApp's security.
Exactly.
But yeah, again, depending on how tinfoil hatted you want to get, that's either, you know, a great plan that will allow you know, cross messaging from Messenger to WhatsApp or Instagram to WhatsApp and whatnot, or
more big data.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or it's more big data. In Facebook's case,
Facebook, out of those four things, Facebook was the originator, and then it created Messenger, correct? But Instagram was something else. It bought Instagram and it bought WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So the last two are the ones that are folded into it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Again, there's a lot of talk there. If you go into the articles, obviously it's all about the you know, the encryption, and how we make it work and all the rest. I could see both sides of that from a technical point of view. Merging the back end into one infrastructure makes a lot of sense, I'm sure, because otherwise, if you're merging, you know, if you're running three different back ends, that's an awful lot of overhead, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I hate having to have all those separate apps installed. I've uninstalled the Facebook app. I've uninstalled the Messenger app. So anytime that someone sends me a private message in Messenger, if I want to look at it on my phone, I have to force the desktop version, and that's just a pain.
Yeah. So, what should we do next? Right, well, worth a chirps here. I've got a worth a chirp from Dougie in the Slack. That's a shortcut which will take you to iTunes and App Store subscriptions in one tap. Yes, it's in the show notes. I won't attempt to read it out because, as you can imagine, it's one of those, you know, 1A, 3F, 47P, blah, blah, blah. But it will take you directly to your App Store subscriptions. It's not the first time I've seen one of these because actually trying to find your subscriptions is a nightmare. Slightly easier on iOS than it is on the Mac, but anyway, there's a shortcut in there which you can use and save, which allows you to go directly to your App Store subscriptions.
That's good.
Yep. We have a website sent in by Donny Yankelo, a GIF editor, which is called easygif.com. Apparently it's an online GIF editor, which he discovered whilst helping somebody out, apparently. The online GIF maker and image editor. Easygif.com is a simple online GIF maker and toolset for basic animated GIF editing. So there we go. That's a nice one. And last of all, tell a lie. We have GoodNotes 5 Upgrade Bundle by Time-Based Technology on the iOS App Store, which Mac Jim sent in. As he says, they've got an unusual upgrade policy where what you pay for the upgrade bundle is based on what you paid for the previous version you have. So basically, whatever you paid for the previous version, they will knock off the price. So I can only assume that GoodNotes 4 was sold at a variety of prices, or was discounted, or maybe put in some bundles or whatever. Apparently, I don't know quite how it works, but whatever you paid for your previous version will be knocked off the cost of the current version. So if you paid the full price for GoodNotes 4, I believe the GoodNotes 5 upgrade is free. And then it, obviously goes all the way up to you never bought it before, and that will cost you about, I think, £15. But there we go. So that's interesting. Jim put that in as much as a comment about the interesting upgrade strategy as he did about the product itself.
Yeah.
And I've got one here called Hackintosher Build Your Own, which is at hackintosher.com if anybody's interested in building a Hackintosh. I thought that was quite interesting. More and more people were saying that, the cost of renewing their Mac is getting beyond what they can afford. If you go to that site, there's a tab of builds, which has, I'm assuming, the instructions on how to build a Hackintosh. There's one in here, for example, a $400 budget Coffee Lake Hackintosh build guide based on a Gigabyte Z370 HD3, whatever that means. I'm sure that's probably what parts, but I'm pretty sure if you then follow that link, it will give you a list of parts that you need to buy in order to build a Hackintosh, and obviously it's got instructions on how to install the OS and how to do various other things that you need to do to make a Hackintosh work. So there we go. We've got a couple of security stories just to wrap up with, I think. I found one here called 2FA What Are the Best Apps, which is on 925 Mac, and that will talk about various authenticator type apps, Google Authenticator, Authy, 1Password, and so on. Microsoft Authenticator.
I like the 1Password.
Yep, lots of people like 1Password. I'm not a 1Password user personally. There we go. Authy is in there. Microsoft, Google Authenticator, so on. I've got a whole load of them actually, personally, although I don't use them very much, I must admit.
That's why I got rid of them and just stuck to 1Password. I thought, I can do this on an app.
Well,
Yay!
yeah, if you've got one app that works for you, that is true. And I'm talking about two-factor authentications. I have ordered myself from Amazon a Feition, I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's Feitiin, an ePass FIDO NFC enabled security key, which looks like a little plastic key.
I thought you were going to say a little plastic dog with a name like Fido.
No, yeah, I know. No, it is a USB and key made to look like a plastic key. It wasn't very expensive. Obviously, the famous ones are YubiKey, but they range in price from about £15 up to about 100.
Oh wow!
Yeah, well, they come in various types. I've bought this one to try it out. And it's a universal two-factor FIDO key with NFC support. Whether it will pan out at the moment, not many things support it. I've linked a thing, how to secure your accounts with a universal two-factor key or YubiKey, which was from How to Geek. It would appear at the minute that the main things you can use it with are Google, GitHub, Microsoft,
Dropbox, perhaps, because it says that in the title.
Facebook, Dropbox. At the minute, it's a sort of nascent technology. Apparently, there's a web authentication API coming, which will make it much more, accessible. I'm going to experiment with it, basically. It cost me £17, this key.
You're going to put it on a lanyard? Like, are you going to carry it around with you everywhere?
Yeah, that's the point of it. You carry it around with you, and instead of using one of these authenticators or whatever, if you can either insert the key or to authenticate, or if it's NFC enabled, tap the NFC.
Jolly good. So that will be
so
future.
It's a fingerprint. You store your fingerprint on it because there's a picture of a person.
This one doesn't. Some of them have fingerprint readers and whatnot in. Some of the more expensive ones. I've bought a really.
I was going to say it for
for £17. No, mine's a really basic one because I just want to experiment it, and I do know that at the moment, it's not super widely accepted. I wanted to just try it out and see what I think. Really.
Yeah, you're going to have to keep one USB port dedicated to it.
Well, normally you only have to put it in. You normally only have to put it in, to authenticate. So you don't have to keep it in there. It's not like a dongle. It's like, insert your key now to authenticate. Rather
How
than
often are you going to have to do that?
Well, of course,
you might as well leave it in for the course of the day as you're doing computing work that requires that.
Well, but then again, most of
very close by.
You say that, but then again, most of the sort of services that you're likely to want to use it with, you can basically say, "Don't ask me again on this computer," can't you?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, so it says it works with Chrome, Firefox, and Opera.
Yeah, at the moment, yes.
Yeah, and it'll work on Windows, Mac, Linux, Chrome OS, and even Android.
Allegedly. Apparently, I'm not sure that the NFC. I think I read that the NFC doesn't work with Apple iPhones because Apple haven't released the NFC API, so that kind of limits it. Which may
I'll be interested to hear how you get on.
Which may be why the YubiKey Lightning key was a bigger story than I thought, because when we talked about that last week or the week before, I kind of went, well, yeah, you can, now they're doing a Lightning port one, but at the same time you can use NFC. Well, apparently you can't use NFC on the iPhone, so the Lightning YubiKey becomes a somewhat more useful object. There we go. Well, I think that's pretty much all of the stories, people. So we've been going quite a long time, so I think we should wrap it up. So what we usually do here, Melissa, is you get to tout wherever you put your stuff. So take it away.
It's really very easy. I'm online all over at TheMacMommy, and I have my website, TheMacMommy.com. And thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
No problem at all. Nick?
Yes, Spligosh, Spligosh, very occasionally on Twitter.
Yes, very occasionally indeed. I am, of course, on the Twitters as @Serenak, and that's SERENAK. And the show is Essential Apple, and all of our stuff is over at essentialapple.com. I suppose I should just read out the giveaways and offers. Don't forget, one lucky listener can win a free free entry to Dr. Mac's Working Smarter for Mac Users video course, which retails for $500. And he's also gifted us a copy of his book Working Smarter for Mac Users, which I believe retails for $25. So if you would like a chance to win that, email essentialapple@sudomail, that's SUDO mail.com, with the subject Dr. Mac, and you will go into the draw, and we will draw that in a couple of weeks' time. Also, Ghostery gifted us 10 Ghostery swag bags. Again, email essentialapple@sudomail.com. With this one, you have to put in your postal address and your T-shirt size, because as Nick points out, we cannot email you a shirt. So again, email in for that one, and we'll draw the names out of the hat in a couple of weeks' time. And listeners of the show can get an extra $10 discount off purchases of Luminar or Aurora HD 2019 with the coupon code EssentialApple at the checkout. There we go. Well, thank you both for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I think we'll all just say goodbye, shall we? Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Essential Apple podcast, and I'd like to say, if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com, and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac podcasting network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchot's and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
Hi, I'm Bart Bouchot, host of the Let's Talk Apple podcast. Every month I gather together a panel of Apple followers and we digest the month's Apple news. Our aim is to step back and take a 40,000-foot view of all things Apple. We're the perfect complement to the many great daily news shows out there. Listen and subscribe at www.lets-talk.ie.
So I'm someone who likes to have very little on my desktop.
Yeah, me too. I don't put anything on my desktop.
Yeah, as little as possible for me.
Yeah.
But some people, live off their desktop, and
Right.
you
Yeah.
go and look at their machines, and you think, ah.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I work with lots of people who I think they just were not given very good introductory skills, and
Yes.
so they just compensated the best way they knew how. So as a result, they've got this desktop that's just littered with things because they were never taught to use the Finder
Right.
as a tool. And so, well, I know it's there because I put it, up in the upper right-hand corner. They don't quite understand how icons end up moving themselves all around the desktop as you keep adding things.
Yes.
And then if, God forbid, if they click on something by accident and rename it, I mean, it's awful. And so a lot of times my job is to teach people how to use the Finder and how to actually file things. And that, did you know that the desktop is actually a folder that you can sort and view by kind and rename the files in the Finder?
Yeah.
And
of course,
like their minds are just blown,
And of course, back in the day, for PCs particularly, there was problems with putting things on the desktop because the
There's
machine
always been
it would
problems.
preload all that information,
Yes,
and therefore it would
yes.
slow your machine down.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not still a problem, although there's other problems that contribute. So it's still a good idea to keep a clean desktop and put things where they belong.
Yeah.
But I have actually in the past rescued people from, they'd have a 4 gigabyte file on their desktop and wonder why did their computer
why
take
it's
so
being
long?
slow.
And why do I have to wait for this beach ball? And they just get so irritated. I'm like, okay, let's put this document in the documents folder. Oh, these are photos. Do you think maybe they belong in the pictures folder? Put
Do you know
things
what
where
else?
they belong.
You know what else I find fascinating, Melissa? It's the way how different people do different things in different ways.
Oh, it's totally fascinating.
So I'm having grown up sort of with pre PCs, as it were, before PCs were a main thing, and then with PCs and Macs
So
and
pre GUI is what you're saying.
yeah. Back to the old DOS days and things like that. I always learned about folder structures and all that sort of thing, whereas I've got a colleague at work, and he's just as effective at me. In fact, often more effective than me, because he uses search for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So when he wants to find a file, he just searches for it. Whereas I'll think, I know where that file is. It's in that folder. Therefore, I'll go and have a look in that folder.
Yeah, that took me a while. I was very much like that. So I'm younger. I started out with a GUI, and because I always worked in graphic design, so everything was very, very much a visual thing for me. But then also working in design, part of my job was also maintaining servers and files and file systems and developing nomenclatures for projects and project management. So I'm very, I used to love it when, well, we can still do it in the dock, but I remember back in like OS 9 days where you could pin a folder to the bottom of your screen, and it would sit there like a little tab, like on a manila folder
windows.
kind of, and you could just click it and it would slide up, and then you could just go navigate to your file. And I loved arranging my stuff like that because I could easily get to my project by just clicking, and everything that I wanted to get to was 3 clicks. It was just three clicks away. So it was really super efficient. So I was never one of those people that just, slapped everything on the desktop. So I'm, even though I'm used to a visual iconographic user interface, I still, like you, I much prefer a hierarchy. I like things to be in order. I'm one of those people that gets ticked off because you can't just go to your library. You have to press the Option key now to get to your library. Yeah, it's like, Apple would hide things from people because they're hand holding.
You can actually,
they know it's best.
You can actually make that stay visible
without having to press the Option key anymore.
If you go to the library, go into the user folder. You need to be in the home folder, and it's in.
Go back to home folder.
View options, and right at the bottom there's show the library folder.
Show view options. I like it.
So if you turn that on, your library will never disappear again.
I like it. That's awesome. Thank you. That's very cool. I'll probably still press the Option key out of muscle memory, but I love tweaking things like that. That is way cool.
So there you go. It's like Yeah, there's loads of things. The thing is, as the Mac's got bigger and more complicated all the time, there are hundreds of
Right.
things. There was a thread on Twitter months ago now, but it was like, tell me something you really love about the Mac that lots of people don't know, and it was just
Oh, I love that stuff.
absolutely full of all those sort of things. Do you know that
Yeah.
most people don't know you can adjust the volume in quarter pips, which instead of simply pressing the volume up and down, I think it's Option Shift volume up and down. I
Option, yeah.
think. I don't use it myself, but is it Option?
I have a touch bar on my MacBook Pro, and I don't know, I don't love it. And
Yeah,
I
Option
read an
Shift,
article
and
recently.
if you do Option Shift and use the volume up, volume down, it'll only go a quarter of a pip at a time. Same applies to brightness as
that's
well.
Cool.
So as we were talking about searching, so on my Mac now, I do use searching more than I used to. I've got Alfred, so I quite like being able to invoke that and search for something that way. Or
Alfred does tap into Spotlight. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I know I can use either.
Now, here's something. Try this in Spotlight. Have you ever had the need? Well, maybe it might be different because of the way you're. So the other day, I was looking for a phone number. There was this mysterious something showed me a phone number, and I thought, where do I know that phone number from? Because I don't memorize phone numbers because, of course, I use contacts. And I simply tried to type in the phone number to Spotlight search, and it kept thinking I wanted to perform a math equation. Like it was trying to solve.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it didn't even work with, I put parentheses in front of the area code because, out in the United States, we're +1 area code and the exchange and then the 4 digits. And it kept thinking it was a math problem. So it would not let me search for a phone number. And I tried searching it in my contacts app. The problem was the phone number that I had, I found what the mistake was. It was missing one of the digits. And that's why I couldn't find it in contacts. But it was like, well, thanks, Spotlight. You're no help at all. Usually it finds those sorts of things. I was kind of surprised that it would not let me go past a math problem.
Interesting. But then I very rarely search using Spotlight. I use the Finder search.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
On the window bar.
I used to, but I have found Spotlight to be more and more and more useful as it's indexed more things, that it finds pieces of text inside of notes and things like that that the search in the Mac Finder wouldn't necessarily find because it's not in the file name.
That's true. I guess mostly because most of what I do when I'm searching is searching for files at work. Rather than have to, like you were saying earlier, rather than manually going, all right, well, that's that job number, so go to that year, go to that month, go to that bunch of numbers, that just type in the name or the job number.
Well, I've been, trying to pepper whatever it is that I make with some kind of keyword so that I can make it searchable.
Yeah, that's very organized.
Has been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye and thank you for listening.